War of the Worlds 2025 is currently sitting at a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes. Why? Why do we hate this so much? Why are we not vibing with the new War of the Worlds? And can we fix it as creative BFFs? That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Story Pod podcast. Join me, won't you? Let's fix this a little bit. Come on in, bestie. Welcome to Story Pod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. So, as I mentioned, War of the Worlds 2025 is sitting at a 3%. When I decided to make this video, it was at a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I was flummoxed. I was like, what could possibly be so terrible? I have to watch it and I need to see if there are story issues. But before we get started, my name is Ashley. I am your creative BFF. Okay. If you have any story questions, if you need any help with your idea, please feel free to reach out to me. You can do so at creativebff.com, the contact section, or you can send me an email, ash@creativebff.com. And we're having like a cute little like after work special right now. It's probably not after work for you, but for me it is. So if my eyes look a little more relaxed, that is why, because we have completed our day. Excuse me, as per usual, mucus will not let me be great. Anyway, we've completed our day, but I did want to come and discuss, excuse me, wow. I did want to come and discuss this movie before it left my mind. So what I did as I watched this War of the Worlds 2025, which you can find on Amazon Prime, okay, is I took copious notes and I wanted to see what the story structure breakdown was. And I found that it definitely follows the Save the Cat story structure, which, listen, full disclosure, is one of my favorites. It is the first story structure that helped me to understand how to put together a story. So it has a warm place in my heart for that reason. And I did find that it conformed quite closely, even down to the percentages of time in the movie that each beat would need to take place. So that was an interesting experiment, which I think I'm going to do with other movies in the future because it's just kind of fun to see. Although fun, yes, but also does it kind of ruin the movie experience? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I will not make you sit through all of my copious notes. So I condensed them into like a couple of sentences each beat. If you want to see more details, more of what's happening, sorry, I needed to close a little window on my screen, then you can feel free to go watch the movie to get all of the nitty-gritty details down. So let's get right into it. Let's do the story beats. We're going to run through it real quick. I'm going to read my notes. Now listen, I've taken notes for both parts of this video, the story structure breakdown, as well as how I would fix this story. Also, side note, full disclosure, I did not read any comments or anything like that before I watched this movie. And I still haven't, because I wanted if I found any issues, if I had any problems, I wanted it to be genuine to what I saw and what I had an issue with. Or if I enjoyed anything, I wanted my enjoyment of it to be purely based on my own experience and not on what anybody else had to say. So I haven't read the comments. This is just my thoughts as I was going through the movie and what I would do to fix it. So anyway, let's get into the story structure. If I remember, I will put a link to a really handy PDF that I found. I didn't create it, but I did find it online, and I used it to basically compare the movie to the Save the Cat beat sheet. So Future Ashley, please remember to put a link to that PDF because it was very helpful to me. And if you want it, it will be helpful to you as well. So opening image, I will be averting my eyes to read my notes. Please don't hate me. Feel free to just like listen, because I don't know that I'm going to put any visuals up because I don't know the legalities of adding visuals to this video. So if you want to put your phone down, put your headphones on and just go about your errands or go for a walk or whatever have you, please feel free. Okay. So let's get into the story structure. Now, the opening image, Will Radford, a Homeland Security analyst, lives entirely through screens, surveilling Washington, D.C., hacking his kids' devices, and micromanaging their lives remotely. His wife has died, leaving a strained household. We also glimpse Faith, his pregnant daughter. So the setup is NASA scientist Sandra calls Will about strange atmospheric anomalies, but he dismisses her. Instead, he focuses on tracking an activist hacker called Disruptor. Meanwhile, his family resents how he controls them digitally, but never shows up in person. And I want to cut in here real quick and just say, Sandra as a character confused me a little bit. Ooh, sorry if you heard my computer yelling at me. She might do that over the course of this video. So she kind of confused me as a character because, and maybe this was just my inattention, but I'm also going to say that the visuals in this opening scene were going by really quick. So in order to absorb everything, I'd probably have to watch it a couple of times to see, okay, who is who and what is their job. Her job kind of confused me because our first introduction to Sandra is that she is, on a video call. She gets into a video call with Will and she's talking about these wild atmospheric phenomenon that are happening, storms that are stronger than they should be, so on and so forth. And she asks him about it, but even in the first like-minute of this video, there's no indication that he would know anything. And he expresses as much like, I don't know, good luck, basically. So why are you asking him about it? That's kind of a theme that I've seen a little bit, a couple times in the movie that kind of like made me side eye a little bit. But also her job is unclear because right now in the setup with what she's bringing to Will with these atmospheric phenomena, it makes it seem like her job as a scientist is to investigate this type of stuff, weather events and things like that. But then later in the movie, spoiler alert, the whole thing is going to be a spoiler. She's able to figure some things out about the aliens and kind of get into some kind of lab work and, tech stuff. Not too much tech stuff, but as it relates to the aliens. And it's kind of like, how do you know how to do this? Is this your specialty? Like, who are you, girl? Okay. Anyway, moving right along. The theme stated is his daughter Faith asks Will if he ever leaves the office. Girl, you so loud. Hold on, let me turn my computer down a little bit so she doesn't keep yelling. So his daughter Faith asks if he ever leaves the office, essentially. And Dave questions whether trading privacy for safety is worth it. The implied theme, you can't live life from behind a screen forever. Now, I don't know if it's like there can be two things. Both of these things kind of come back later on. So I'm not sure if it's like a dual theme, but I do think that the primary theme would be around him living his life behind screens, basically. Okay, so the inciting incident, FBI agents raid disruptors who, if you've already forgotten, which, listen, I don't blame you, which is the kind of anarchist, hacker, activist character whose identity is shrouded in mystery. Basically, agents raid disruptors' supposed location, but they only find a decoy. At the same time, meteors, which we find out later are actually alien ships, rain down across Earth. So part of I'm just going to keep moving on because I did already say in the opening image that Will was looking for, not in the opening image, but in this first scene, Will was trying to track Disruptor. Okay, anyway, so the debate. Sandra warns that DC will be hit. She heads to investigate a crash site. Will tries to coordinate both his job and his family, directing Dave through chaos and sending Faith's boyfriend to rescue her while ignoring calls from his boss. The tension is family versus duty, and it's kind of like, okay, which one is he going to choose? I guess that's the theme that I kind of deduced from what was being told. You let me know if you watched it, if you saw anything different. As always, if I'm wrong in any of my little points here, please feel free to kindly correct me in the comments. We're a community. We're all just trying to figure it out together, okay? Anyway, so break into 2. The Martian tripods rise. Will juggles FBI calls, surveillance feeds, and his son's pleas for attention while cities burn. He's in the fight, but only from his chair. So his son, when all of this starts to pop off, essentially is trying to be like, Dad, there's something you should know about all this. And the dad, Will keeps dismissing him. And it's kind of like annoying, whatever. But so anyway, moving right along, fun and games. Tripods, these alien tripods, smash through global defenses while Will orders air support that gets obliterated. Militaries briefly rally, so we do see that they're able to come up with some kind of plan that does start giving them results, and they start taking down some of these tripods. But, the aliens, of course, are still putting up a fight. And at this point in the movie, I did make a note in my notes, which is that this movie is basically being told through this gimmick of we're seeing everything that's happening, not live necessarily as it's happening. It's not like the movie is putting us there like most movies do. We're seeing it, I guess, a dual kind of POV, from seeing it from Will's perspective behind his computer, seeing the different screens, the different surveillance feeds and different, things that he's hacking into, seeing what's happening, the body cam on, people who are out there in the field, other FBI agents and things like that. As well as we're seeing Will, I guess, kind of on his screen as well. So that's how the story is being told. And I was thinking that when the opener was using that kind of gimmick, I was like, okay, I'm not mad at this. But then as it started to be like, oh, the whole movie is going to be told like this through these video feeds that we're seeing through Will's work computer. And I was like, wow, it kind of got old really fast for me. Maybe other people loved it. And early on in the movie, it created this odd effect of, it feels like the narrative is like moving at a breakneck pace, like so fast. But then also when I looked at the time, because this stuff happening was around 23 minutes in. So I looked to see how much more time was left in the movie, and there was like an hour left. And I was like, wow, what? That feels like there's way too much time left in this movie. What else could possibly happen? So it was kind of a weird experience at this point. And I think that a lot of it had to do with the actual presentation of the movie, the way it was presented. It wasn't my favorite, especially being the way it was told the whole time. Anyway, moving right along. So the B story is Will's broken relationship with Faith and Dave. And he does a lot of hacking their messages and their computers. And, he's able to see what Dave is playing and spending his money on. And he's watching Faith through cameras as she's walking through her, university and things like that. Also being able to hack into her phone and her computer and just reading her messages. And so really invasive. So as part of this, he hacks Faith and her boyfriend's message. Now, Faith has a boyfriend that didn't really mention this, and she's pregnant. So Will learns that he wasn't invited to Faith's baby shower. And he kind of gets a taste of how much they resent his surveillance of their lives while not really being involved like that. But he still tries to keep them safe through his control. The midpoint is Will realizes that the tripods are targeting data centers, draining information. It's like their food source. NASA Sandra confirms that the aliens consume data to grow stronger. And there's this whole scene where the tripods make this loud, I call it like the God sound, because it kind of sounds like what you would imagine like the Rapture to sound like, a big old horn that, fills the whole city. I don't even know what that sound would be called, like not really like a horn, but I'm sure you can hear what I'm saying. It's like that deep bass note sound. And the tripods begin to surround this building and probably other buildings as well, that it turns out that these are data centers, where large, huge chunks of data and information are stored, housed basically. And so the tripods basically hack in and they begin to drain the data, like sucking it out, however that works in the logic of the world. So once that process is done, once they drain this data center, and presumably all of the other data centers around the world, I don't know, that's not made very clear, the military counterattack collapses, systems go offline. We're even seeing things like people are losing their Facebook accounts. Like there's a moment where Will goes to his Facebook account, or maybe his deceased wife's Facebook account. I think it's his deceased wife's Facebook account. And it's almost kind of like a shrine that he keeps up because he hasn't moved on from her death. I'm not saying that he had to at this point, but he starts panicking as he sees that the last messages, voice messages that she sent and pictures and things like that are basically destroyed, absorbed, eaten, consumed in this whole process of the tripods eating up the data. And that becomes a question for me later, which I won't talk about now. I'm probably not even going to go super deep in it, but some things happen later on that to me seem like illogical based on what happened here. Anyway, so because of all the data being absorbed or eaten by the tripods, planes start crashing, the military starts going all, higgledy-piggledy, is that a word? Heggedy-peggedy. And they basically now have to do what was it called? Like what was it called? What was the term? Let me look at my notey notes, my deep notes, because I can't remember the term. It was girl, what was that word? What is the word? Hold on. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Just a moment. They have to do a manual attack is what it was called in the movie. So yeah, the military now has to do like a manual attack, meaning I guess that they can't use all of the high-tech tracking, whatever the military uses in order to do this kind of stuff. So now the bad guys close in. Of course, with that, the tripods start to take ground back that they had lost. So bad guys close in. Infrastructure fails worldwide. Faith's injury worsens. So, which I didn't mention, during this whole fun and games midpoint time, Faith, like a dummy, leaves her office to see what's going on during the attack happening, which is like, girl, what are you doing? At first, she's like hiding under the table. And then we see her going outside to see what's going on. Why are you doing that? Okay, whatever. And of course, she gets injured. Her leg gets impaled by some pipe-like object. And so she and Will, her father, have like a little bit of a cringy conversation in that, she's irritated with him. So basically he remotely unlocks a Tesla and tells her to hurry up and get to it, because she's basically, a tripod is basically coming to try to kill her. Why is it focusing on her? I don't know. So she's trying to hobble her way to the Tesla. Of course, she gets in, and he has the Tesla remotely take her. He guides the Tesla to some place like a mile or 2 miles away. And that moment also kind of gave me a little issue. One of the issues that I had in terms of like the timing of everything that's happening, like what's going on here. But the distance was like 1 or 2 miles away. They're having this conversation in the car where it's kind of like an argument. And she yells at him, is like, you think you have control, but you don't have control, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, girl, he basically does, because he unlocked a Tesla and is driving remotely the Tesla to where you will be safe. Is this the right time to assert that? Whatever. Anyway, so, with that detail added, now in the bad guys close in, her injury worsens. She did get to the spot that he was sending the Tesla, but of course she decides she wants to try to take the thing out herself rather than waiting for her boyfriend, who Will told him to go and see to Faith. And so he was on his way. He's an Amazon truck driver, which will come in later. And she doesn't want to wait, so she tries to pull the thing out herself, and she makes it worse, of course. On the other side of town, basically, Sandra, it's not really on the other side of town. Sandra's in LA somewhere. She reports as she's investigating these tripods, because basically during the part where they're figuring out that, the tripods are targeting data centers and sucking all of the data out, Sandra was there as like boots on the ground. And she gets inside, and she eventually discovers, it was a weird little bit of scenes, but she discovers that these bugs adapt by feeding on data. And the world now is also spiraling into looting and chaos and migration, mass migration. And this is part of my issue with the timing of these things, because all of that stuff is kind of happening in a really short, it feels like the whole movie was over the span of maybe 3 hours in one day, literally, maybe 4 or 5 max. But like it all took place on one day, very short snippets of time. And if that's not the case, the way they put it together was confusing. But anyway, so rather than nitpicking on how that whole scene with Sandra played out, because it was kind of like, I didn't like the way it happened, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Will gets more isolated, ignoring both his superior and Sandra as the aliens tighten their grip. And what we do start to see is that while he's still kind of doing his job, it does seem like his focus becomes more on making sure his children are okay, which is what he's supposed to do. Okay. And it really is like more so like making sure Faith is okay, which, listen, she's pregnant. I get it. That's his first baby, sure. And his son is a bit of an annoyance to him, I guess. But it kind of felt janky. It's like, are you checking on your son too? He does, but it's like not as much as with Faith, who was annoying to me. Everybody was pretty much annoying. But anyway, all is lost. The Martians wipe out the world's networks, erasing even Will's personal archives of his late wife, which I already mentioned. That's the all is lost beat, because which I probably shouldn't have mentioned earlier because I was just going off of the memory of the movie, but his all is lost moment is losing these archives and these voice messages and the pictures and things on Facebook of his late wife. And, you could see how that would be like the death that happens kind of all over again. And Dark Night of the Soul, Disruptor hacks the airwaves, exposing that this Goliath surveillance program, which we do see, sprinkled in earlier in the movie, and Disruptor's focus that he, she, whatever, is going to expose is on this government data surveillance, massive program that the government has instituted, which up to now at this point is like what is it called? Like a conspiracy theory turns out to be a real thing. But basically, Dark Night of Soul Disruptor hacks the airwaves that are somehow still operational, like YouTube. How are we still having YouTube? I don't know. Lots of little plot holes here. Exposing that the Goliath surveillance program attracted the aliens. And it's basically the government's fault that the aliens are here. And he tried to warn everybody and all that kind of stuff. Then basically the twist is that Will's son, Dave, is actually Disruptor or part of Disruptor. And we kind of get like a repetition a little bit of the theme, sort of, which is in a little argument when Will finds this out. Dave, his son, says, "For someone who spends his life watching, you sure miss a lot." So break into 3. Okay, we're getting through it. Will's superior, Briggs, his boss basically, is revealed as the man who activated Goliath, drawing the aliens to Earth. And now Will and Dave team up with no other choice. There's no other option. They team up to fight back. And basically after obviously the reveal conversation between Will and his boss obviously revokes all of his access to the network. And up to this point, which I guess I didn't mention because I was trying to like not put too much detail, I forgot his name for a second. Will is in his office building place of work. He's basically the only one in there right now. And this is important because Goliath is housed in the basement of the building that Will is in. So just keep that as a note. So the finale, basically the plan is for Dave, Dave, which is his son, Faith, and her boyfriend, who are in the same place now. He was able to get there, help her. She's okay. She's stabilized. Sandra and Dave's other Disruptor crew teammates to create and upload something called like a cannibal code. Basically, the plan is to like poison the tripods by uploading this code into the data that they are absorbing. Basically, here is where now this whole scene was kind of cool. I enjoyed this little scene here, but it was very convenient that, okay, a conflict that came up was they didn't have a way to get this code to Will for him to basically take and input down in the basement of this building, because he doesn't carry a thumb drive because he's not allowed to, because they don't allow thumb drives into his office, for good reason. So now what they have to do is they have to get a thumb drive to Will, and Faith's boyfriend, being an Amazon driver, just happens to have a little rinky-dink child-sized drone in his backpack, and he just kind of throws off, "Oh yeah, they've been training us for months on this, and you have to place an order through Amazon for him to be able to like deliver it." And I'm like, how is Amazon still working? How is YouTube still working? And throughout all of this, by the way, even after the data being drained, we're still getting these video feed updates on social media, on other traditional news media sites. So Facebook is still putting stuff out. People are still posting on YouTube. He's still able to access surveillance cameras and things like that, which in a situation where all of this data has been absorbed and destroyed, basically enough to where now the military can't really operate, it seems to me that it would be odd. It doesn't seem like it would fit that things like YouTube and Facebook, especially since we saw that Facebook kind of went down also. All of that data was gone. Seems like this shouldn't be working. Seems like you shouldn't be able to order things on Amazon still, but whatever, plot holes. So anyway, they're doing that. And the other additional complication is that once Will is able to get back into the network, the government network that he was locked out of, because Dave is a hacker extraordinaire. Once he's able to get hacked back in, he is able to kind of remotely join in or observe a Zoom call that's happening between his boss and like the president and, you know, the head military general guy and other people. And the plan is to bomb, you know, do an airstrike, an air raid or whatever on the building that Will is in, because Goliath is in the building. So they're just like, let's just destroy it all so that the aliens can't get it, because they get smarter when they eat the stuff and, you know, when they eat the data. So we just have to destroy it all. So that does put a time clock, because now we see, oh, it's 5 minutes until the airstrike reaches the building that Will is in. And, you know, so there's this high tension thing of like the drone is trying to fly around tripods. This tiny child-sized drone, the size of my head, a little bit bigger than the size of my head, wingspan, okay, is attracting the attention of these huge building size, skyscraper size alien tripods. It seems like they wouldn't notice this little drone flying around the city, but cool, whatever. We have to add complication and conflict and tension. It's fine. So also, side note, the transition. So there's like it's kind of a cool little video gamey type scene, right? And, you know, the other people on the team, like the son and everything, are trying to like hack little, you know, bomber airplanes to kind of try to help get the drone through and, you know, take attention away of the, what do they call it, the tripods and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a cool scene. I wasn't mad at that scene. But the transition, so the drone finally gets to the building that Will is in. The bomber planes, not the ones that are coming to destroy the building, but just other ones that have weapons on them, do shoot a tripod. The tripod explodes. There's an explosion. And the drone flies through the explosion, and somehow the transition is now we're inside the office building houseway. It wasn't even like a window that we saw it go through. It just kind of like we flew through smoke and the smoke cleared and now we're in the building. All right. I'm side-eyeing it, but whatever. We're in the building now. Long story short. All right. It wasn't really short, but so they get the drone in. Finally, the drone gets the USB drive to Will. The final little push is that Will, and this little scene is kind of cheesy because the actor, forgot his name, Ice Cube, I don't know his real name, please forgive me, is like obviously just, they told him just walk slow like you're being held back by tentacles or whatever, which is what the CGI was showing, and it looked really janky at that point. But basically he's able to struggle through slowly like he's walking through quicksand to get the USB plugged in to the server or whatever with like a couple of seconds left. And immediately, somehow, literally immediately, the airstrike is called off and they turn away. How did that happen? We don't know. We don't know if Dave somehow was able to change the code order or whatever. We don't know if there was a signal sent out from him plugging in the thumb drive to Goliath that says stop, because nobody knew that this code was inputted except for the team who created it. Will, Dave, et al. Or whatever. So we don't see like the president calling it off. We have no idea how him plugging in the thumb drive caused the airstrike to immediately be aborted. But okay, whatever. Basically, the code is uploaded, tripods begin collapsing, it's successful, humanity is saved. We don't know if Will made it or not, okay? Because we see that an email that he started in this Act 3 as he was waiting for the code to be compiled by Dave and Faith and whatever, he was writing, or he finished an email that he had started writing when Faith was in the Tesla talking about parenting is hard and I always tried to whatever. and we see the completion of that. We saw him writing it, writing it while he was waiting for the code to be completed. And then now we see we see what he sent, and it was this long, like, bro, you had like a couple of moments to type this before you had to go and put this code in to poison the tripods, right? But it's this long thing, and somehow he was able to attach like screenshots of surveillance moments and pictures and things that had happened earlier in the movie before the data breach or the data consuming moment or whatever. And I'm like, where did he get those? Wasn't everything destroyed and eaten? So how do you have these pictures? Whatever. So it's this cheesy email. And it's kind of supposed to give the impression that maybe he died, but literally immediately after that email is done, we see that he has now been made the director of his department, and he's talking to the president, and the president offers him some kind of, project, some kind of big project that still deals with surveillance. And this is where the secondary potential theme comes in, about surveillance and all that kind of stuff. And he basically tells the president, no, we're not going to do that program. And I got to go because I got to go be with my family. And then we see pictures of the supposed baby shower that Faith had. And it's literally, the baby shower is Will, Faith, the boyfriend, Dave, and Sandra. That's the whole baby shower. And they're wearing some cheesy t-shirts that were kind of mentioned earlier in the movie. The end. So yeah. That was the movie. So let me pull up my other notes here. Side note, let me know down below if you saw it, what you thought about it. There's a lot that I left out in terms of the specific things that happen in the story. You can feel free to watch it. We would be here for even longer. How long have we already been here talking about this? 37 minutes, bro. So we got to move on. All right. This is already a long video. So now I want to get to the main issues that I identified, other than things like, okay, the CGI is kind of janky, and I didn't really like the presentation of the movie because it made things more confusing. It got old really fast. I wanted to look at the story specifically, and here were some of the issues that I had. Now, the first one is not really something that I'm going to elaborate on in this. It's something that I want to put a pin in to think about, perhaps for a future video. I don't know if it would really be a video, but even more so for my own writing moving forward. And it may also be that it's because I was looking for this, but this first point, which is not really a point, but I wanted to write it down anyway, is that the story structure felt very on the nose to the Save the Cat beat sheet, which basically is what most movies are structured by, right? That's kind of what it was born out of as a screenwriter for film, right? Blake Snyder. And in this case, it felt very, very, very on the nose, almost a little ham-fisted. And I could be wrong about that. And it could also be, it's because that is what I was specifically looking for. I was specifically taking notes on the story. So I may have played myself. And so that's why I'm not going to go deep into it. But what it did make me want to do is like, okay, can we be a little more organic? Can we weave these things together in a way that feels more organic and a little more elegant, eleganza, okay, than the way it happened here. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in it for later. The first issue that I saw as I thought about it after watching it was that I didn't really have a connection to the characters. I didn't really care about what happened to the characters. And I did find the side characters to either be annoying or like automatons, like nothing really going on. And I understand that side characters don't have to be prismatic and fully developed, but these ones, especially Sandra, felt even more dead behind the eyes. You know, I'm not going to blame the actress, but it just like, bro, I feel like she had kind of like top billing, right? Eva Longoria, I think, was the actress who played Sandra. She kind of had top billing along with Ice Cube, but her character was almost like a non-factor to me. She was there, she did stuff, but it was like, I don't know if we really need you. Anyway, so that was one issue that I had. I felt like the character arc of the main character was kind of weak and unsatisfying after I pondered like, okay, the change that he went through, I didn't feel like it didn't really do anything. It was kind of milquetoast. It was kind of like a white bread mayonnaise sandwich type of character arc. Okay. Then there were, what I felt the most as I was watching it was the internal / story timeline issues. And I mentioned before that it seems to take place in a few hours. But there were times where we saw video feeds from other places around the world. And then we have story things like, we're seeing clips of like mass looting, like you see in, excuse me, I had to sit up a little, I'm sinking too low. But like looting that you would see when people are, doing whatever, looting, crowds of people rushing in to places and stealing things. And then also we see these videos of mass migrations, like hundreds and thousands of people walking down the streets of destroyed cities. And those things feel like they wouldn't start happening in the matter of like 2 hours since this alien invasion started happening. To me, the way that I would think it would go, and I could be wrong, okay? But I would think that these things would take a little more time to begin manifesting after the initial wave of attack and destruction and fear and what is happening, and like we just need to survive. I think that in the first few hours, people are just running and hiding and trying to survive wherever they can, hiding in buildings, finding places to go. Not like, let me take this opportunity to get a Louboutin bag out of this luxury store that I happen to be running past for my life while an alien tripod is chasing me, right? I don't think that we are doing a slow march in what looks like wintertime, because they had people with the hoods on and everything, and it could have been somewhere else in the world, but are we doing a slow migration march? People with backpacks and all this kind of stuff slowly moving through the streets of the city 2 hours after this invasion started? I don't think so. So that confused the timeline quite a bit. And I mentioned Faith's like 1 or 2 mile trip because it was very confusing to me, because okay, he sends her on this 1 or 2 mile trip in the car, right, in the Tesla, and then we see some things, and I can't remember specifically what they were, but I remember it confusing me. Some things we see happen, and it might have even been things like we're seeing video feeds from other places in the world that are showing like nighttime and the military attack going well initially and things like that. And the gimmick of the video feeds made it seem like more time was passing than it actually was, because then at another point we see that Faith's little 2 mile trip has completed. So all of that was happening in like 15 minutes, bro. Or we'll even say if she had to go all roundabout, we'll give it a 30 to 45 minutes maximum for 2 miles, bro. So that really confused the timeline for me a lot. The next thing was that the pace felt really breakneck and it was unrelenting. And I realized later, as I was thinking about this, that I think that was because there were no breaks in the action. It was just constant action, quick moving stuff. And it's kind of like, even as I'm thinking about it right now, it's kind of mentally overwhelming. Like from the beginning, we're seeing all of the, all of the different feeds, and he's logging in and he's having all these different conversations pop up, and he's surveilling his kids. And then, he's finding the disruptor, and he's, inputting, and he's asking for what is it called? A search warrant, and hurry up, we got to get it fast, and all this stuff. And then the action of the invasion happens, and then it's just happening, and it's just happening, and there's no breather moment. And that contributed, I think, to the pace feeling really breakneck, like just fast, which I guess, but also, can we breathe? I think we can space it out a little bit. Let's give it a couple of days, maybe at least. I think I haven't read the source material, and I may have seen some of the other movies, but they're all kind of different, just riffing on the source material, right? I think the original source material took place over several days, up to like 3 weeks. I don't know. I don't think it's like specifically stated in the book how long it took. You let me know if you've read it. Let me know what the timeline, the internal timeline of this invasion was, and the narrative in general. But 3 hours over the course of this day, 3 to 5 hours maximum, it just felt really, really fast for some of the things that happened in the movie. Then another one, the final one that I really kind of felt as I was watching it, was these plot holes and the story logic breakdowns. I'm not going to go into detail in this section as much about this, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit. But basically, that whole thing of, an example of this is that whole thing of like the data being drained, the military falling apart basically, or the military attack falling apart because of this, social media collapsing, all of that kind of stuff. And yet we're still seeing news feeds. We're still seeing YouTube videos. We're still able to order on Amazon. We're still able to post things to Facebook because some of the videos, the news feed that was coming through was specifically posted on Facebook. So that was a plot hole that was confusing. Could it possibly happen that those things are still active in a situation like this? Maybe, but it seems like it shouldn't be. Seems like it wouldn't be operational. So the fix is, the main direction that I took that I think would fix, and as the way I approached how I would fix this is retaining as much of the original like puzzle pieces and intent as possible. So not like wildly changing the setup, basically like the what is it called? The types of characters that we're going to be following, but just kind of like flipping it a little bit. And I think that by doing that, other issues that I had kind of that flowed out of that kind of were fixed a little bit. So of course I'm going to read my notes. So my main fix would be to the main character, which is kind of like one of the most important parts, if not the most important part of a story, right? And even me thinking about this, how would I make a better connection? It spawned another video idea, which may be up before this one or will be coming after this one, which is how can we create an instant connection basically with the audience? And I have a couple of different ways that I have identified for myself as I was, trying to figure this out. And so the way that I chose to go for this, and you could probably approach it a bunch of different ways, but the way that I tried to go for this is that I would go for a highly skilled underdog with personality traits that make this main character likable. And the way that I would package the story is that it would be the story of how a small group of teenage / early 20-something hacker anarchist nerds who play at being heroes actually save the world from this alien invasion. And to me already, that's more interesting. And you let me know, how would you fix it? What type of character would you want to follow for this, in keeping with the mix of components that they have in this particular script, the tech stuff and all that? Because I wasn't mad at all of it. I thought that the aliens draining data was kind of like a nice update to the original source material where the Martians drank human blood. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, so what I would do is I would eliminate the daughter and her boyfriend, and I would eliminate NASA Sandra, okay, out as side characters. I would then flip the focus to the main character being the teenage hacker son and his team of like co-hackers in the disruptor crew. And the other character, I would still bring in the father, and I'll come back to him. And as we're seeing, in these opening images, as we're seeing these hackers and the crew and everything, and we may or may not get their actual identity at the very beginning, other than the son, whatever. We might not see the rest of them for, half the movie or whatever. But we would throw in an actual save the cat, which I don't think happened in this movie. I can't remember one. So a save the cat is when you're using the save the cat beat sheet story structure, there's a moment early on where we see the character doing something likable, basically, and that's why it's called the save the cat. So we see this character basically saving a cat, and that automatically is supposed to give the audience an affinity towards this main character off the bat, right? So I would give this crew a little save the cat type of moment. Maybe they're doing Robin Hood type stuff, like approving Medicare, Medicaid, whatever coverage to needy families who were rejected for coverage before, like for operations and things that they couldn't afford, and they were rejected, and they changed that. They hack into the system and do that. And basically righting a wrong or two that the audience would generally approve of, and maybe even wish, like, oh, I wish I had the hacking ability to help somebody in that way, right? So now we are kind of like, okay, I like this kid. You're a highly skilled hacker, but we're combining it. And I'll go into more detail about this in the other video where I talk about making the audience kind of like invested in the character in the beginning. So we're combining this highly skilled character with a personality trait, or, whatever that we like. We like them automatically, or more likely to like them and want to follow their story and be like, yeah, I'm on your side. I'm rooting for you. And also making him like a really great gamer, which could factor in later, which does kind of factor in later on in this story. Now, I'm not doing like a full story beat thing. I'm just kind of giving the changes that I would make notes. And the father, who I'm getting ready to get into, does not like that his son is an avid gamer. And he obviously doesn't know that his son is involved in hacking stuff, right? We do still have the dad as a government agent. I'm thinking that maybe he'd be more so like an FBI agent who is boots on the ground, and really, really amazing at what he does, whatever have you. And they do still have the strained relationship, especially since the wife / mother's death. And we could add an emotional B-story beat where maybe even at the beginning of the movie, before everything pops off, it could even be like the anniversary of the mother's death. And instead of spending it with his son, the father is trying to stay busy and go to work, or he has something that he has to go and do, which could even be the disruptor raid. And so instead of prioritizing the time with his family, he goes off and works, and it's his own way of coping with the loss. And we could see like, this is a moment for us to maybe see some of the camaraderie where maybe remotely and even behind their false identities, his disruptor crew is there for him on this anniversary of his mother's death or whatever. And they celebrate it with him. And then the hacker character and dad can argue about that later, preferably during a beat where the action has paused, where we could take a breath for a moment. Okay. Then we could still have, as one of the antagonistic forces, we could still have the director of dad's agency still be an antagonistic force in the story, so we don't have to change that necessarily. And in this first act, we can see that the disruptor crew does finally hack into some big girl government files, and they do find the Goliath plan at the beginning of the story. And they do see like, and it's like the Blue Earth alien stuff and everything. So we do see like, oh, there's this massive data surveillance program that the government has been doing secretly. And it's somehow, we also see the alien stuff tying, because we do see that in the movie at some point, these Goliath files and all of these files that the hacker son has access to, that they eventually post up and everything for the world to see somehow, does include things like the Blue Earth stuff with the aliens and everything, and the weather phenomenon. And side note, that never really came back in the story. The weather phenomenon in the beginning is kind of like, at least I don't remember any sort of significance to this weather phenomenon at all. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, because we're over that part now. So they find this information, right? And they're like, well, we got to put this up, whatever. However that can play out. We can still have the beat of the inciting incident, can still be, sorry, looking at my notes. So it can still mostly happen the same way with the FBI, but now this time his father is in the crew of FBI agents that are going to try to apprehend Disruptor. Whereas in the original, well, in the 2025, Will was still behind the screens, and there was another agent that went with a little team. Anyway, the father this time can be on that team, which adds more emotional intensity, I think, for the son, because this is the moment where the father goes to collect Disruptor, who he doesn't know is his son, but same way as it happened in the original, well, in the 2025, the son bounces his, what is it called? He bounces his signal to another place and sets up a decoy, and that can still happen. And then while the son is watching his father and his team try to apprehend Disruptor and figure out, oh, this is just a decoy, the meteors and the alien spaceships and all that kind of stuff, well, the alien craft or whatever, still crash at that moment. So now the son is kind of panicking, right? Because his father is in imminent and immediate danger, right? So now father and son have to work together to end the invasion, along with the rest of the Disruptor crew, which, in order to kind of help eliminate some of the jarring timeline issues, we can find out that it's kind of been in the works for a long time already. And we don't see in this version of the movie, we won't see any of the longer, if we want it to be like in the span of a day or maybe even 2 days. I'm like, can we space it out a little bit? Let's give it 2 days. Okay. We're not going to see any of these longer term effects of a prolonged alien invasion, like the looting and the migration and all that kind of stuff. Especially since we're trying to wrap it up in like a day or two, right? We can set up that it's kind of already been in play. We can find out that this director antagonist had a deeper connection to what was happening for whatever reasons we set up in the character development part, which we're not going to do in this video. But maybe he wanted to bring the aliens to Earth. And so he set up this Goliath thing, knowing specifically, having had access to the same files that our crew found earlier in the movie, that these aliens, this specific alien type, is drawn to data like this, and this is their food source or whatever. So he created it specifically to draw them for whatever crazy reasons he has, to want these aliens to come and take over. Or it doesn't have to be that, but I kind of like that. We can also see that the son's gamer skills, which the father had disparaged previously, now kind of like come back into play, because, you know, the hacker son can kind of be playing a game, but his father is like the character that he's guiding through all of these things or whatever that happen, and the different technologies and stuff like that, to kind of help his father get through these things. And then what else? Through scenarios. I did also want to say, and I just have a couple more notes. Once the data is drained, if that stays a beat, things become exponentially more difficult, and the characters really have to work hard to find intelligent solutions. Stuff like YouTube and Amazon and Facebook don't work, or if they do, there has to be a very clear reason why, so that the audience is not like, why would that work if we've drained all the data? That shouldn't even be a question in the audience's mind, making them side-eye and taking them out of the story, right? And no handy dandy convenient solutions like a backpack drone. Okay. If we're making it hard, we have to, as writers, find the intelligent solutions to get them out. And if it's too hard for us, we got to go back and we got to plant what we need for them to use as a solution later on. And kind of like the overall theme, not theme necessarily, but the overall kind of thrust of this is that these anarchist hacker nerds can't just play at being heroes anymore. They actually have to step up, and it's really dangerous, more dangerous than just, you know, approving an operation for a needy family, right? It's like lives are at stake. Throughout the story, now we're going to see the interplay of friendships and relationships amongst the hackers, make them well-rounded and likable. They don't have to be, you know, super prismatic, but like, don't let them be dead behind the eyes. They can't be like a mannequin that only comes to life when you need them to do something, right? Don't let them feel that way. So that the audience cares if one or a few of them die, which did happen in the original movie, because we did get introduced in the original that we're referencing, 2025, to this hacker crew after Will got hacked back in and he decides to join forces with Dave. Forgive me if you can hear anything going on outside, but that crew ends up dying because the tripods go and attack them. So, you know, but we didn't care because we only saw them for like 2 minutes beforehand, and we didn't have any emotional connection to any of them. So it's like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. Dave didn't seem to have any kind of, you know, hurt feelings about his friends dying in that way, you know, and he was just really chill afterwards. And that was irritating. Anyway, so we want to make the audience care if some of them dies. So we want to see their friendships and see a little bit of their personalities and all that kind of stuff. And we want to see a gradual understanding and rapport grow between father and son. So we root for them, and we're like excited when we see them finally coming together, and the son is kind of playing the father like a video game, if that's a gimmick that we want to use at some point in the movie. But however they work together, we're like, yes, it's satisfying to see them having worked through their issues and come together in unity in a way that they weren't unified in the beginning of the story. And we want to give them quiet moments away from the action, which is why maybe spacing it out over a couple of days or 3 days or whatever can kind of give the breathing room necessary for the action to stop for a moment. quiet moment away from all that action and the craziness, give them an opportunity to hash out some of the emotional issues, and then return to the fight with a renewed sense of unity and determination. And I think that that will make the overall story more satisfying. All of this may still be very, cliche and tropey and whatever, but this is kind of like the movie that we're in. I think that these things would have made it, these fixes would have made it more enjoyable for me as a viewer, I believe. So anyway, I'm gonna stop here. Okay, we have been talking for a long time, girl. An hour, girl. Oh, we've been talking for a long time. Thank you if you stayed with me. I will be trying to put some timestamps so you ain't gotta watch all the way through. But that was my kind of breakdown of how I would fix this story, this movie, using these same elements that they already have in place. What would you do? How would you fix it? I'm very interested to find out, like, what stood out for you that made the movie unlikable, or if you loved it, why did you love it? What worked for you? I think it's helpful to analyze both the good and the bad so that we then know how to incorporate or how to approach things in our own writing. So anyway, listen, enjoy the rest of your day or your evening. For me, I'm getting ready to go try to eat some dinner, girl. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure as always. And I will see you next week, girl. Same bat time, same bat station. Okay.